Well, good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. On behalf of Parish President Dove, I want to welcome you all to this public meeting to talk about the Terrebonne Parish Nature and Recreation Conservatory project. I have with me Mr. cguidry, who's the Director of TEDA, Terrebonne Economic Development Authority, and with TEDFO, Terrebonne Economic Development Foundation. And I'm Chris Pulaski, Director of Planning and Zoning for Terrebonne Parish. So what we're going to do is just a brief history of this project, how we arrived to where we are today with it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Cohen, who's going to be talking about the specific grant program that we're going to be applying for this summer. But behind me on the screen is some images. The top image is sort of a regional overview, but basically what we're talking about is locally known as the Old Shell property. So this is the marshland basically north of Savan Road between Highway 311 and Highway 24. It actually goes north, goes under Highway 90 and goes a little bit north of that up into the Schriever area. So all of Bayou Cane and Whiskey Bayou, all of that watershed is basically funneled between those two bayous and those two ridges where those highways are. It's a little over 4,000 acres. About 4 years ago, Shell donated that property to Terrebonne Parish. The idea of this project has been an idea for a number of years, but with that donation, that's what really sparked it all. What we're talking about is stormwater management. I mean, Terrebonne Parish, Lafourche Parish, all of the coastal parishes have been working for years on hurricane protection systems like the Morganza to the Gulf project. But what is also happening, and what's so incredibly interesting about the whole system, is that even the internal drainage systems, the back levees that the parish has, all the 31 pump stations around Terrebonne Parish, it really is all tied together, because when you think about Terrebonne Parish, any drop of water that falls upstream in our watershed is going to eventually make its way down to us, but everything hinges on the water level of the intracoastal. Now I'm talking about north and western Terrebonne Parish, right? So all of that water coming down, whether it's from Gibson-Donner area, or you're talking about Schriever or Gray or Homa, whatever's happening, or Bayou Cane, whatever's happening in the intercoastal, that's where that water, it's going to hold that water back potentially. If you've got high water in the intercoastal from a strong southerly wind, the water up north isn't going to do anything. It's just going to back up into the system. So that's what sparked the idea of this project. So it's 4,000 acres. The area could absorb and retain about 1.5 billion with a B gallons of water in this area. Now the idea is whenever there's a storm coming, or we know of a hurricane, or even just a strong summer rain, we can move water in and out of this basin and prepare ourselves to take on the additional water that we're going to be having coming in from upstream. So we can store that water and then hold on to it until such time as the intercoastal can accept it, and then we can pull water out of that basin through the various pump stations. So just last week, we had the groundbreaking for the pump station. That's the other image here in the bottom. The pump station that's behind Rouse's on Martin Luther King Boulevard in Homa. That pump station is on Bayou Cane, and its capacity is 1 million gallons every 5.5 minutes. So that's a lot of water. But that water's got to go somewhere in that basin. If you just push it up and over into the levee, yeah, you're going to have a lot ability to push a bunch of water in, but right now that area is floatant marsh. It's from an ecological standpoint, it's not the healthiest bit of marsh. So we'll need to do enhancements to that wetland area inside that basin. and we'd love to see, restoring it back to what it originally was, which was, trees and open waters, prime wood duck habitat. So we'd love to see that happen. But by improving the habitat, it also gives the water a place to go. We can move water into that system through conveyance channels and things like that. But it also will improve the water quality, because all of that healthy material can help filter out all the impurities that are coming in from runoff, right? And then as it gets released back into the system, whether it continues down Bayou and gets pulled off from the Bonanza pump station into Bayou Terrebonne, or it stays in Bayou and meets up with Whiskey Bayou and gets pulled into Little Bayou Black through the pump station by Sugarwood, we can control the rate at which that happens. So it's an amazing piece of, really structural and heavy engineering meets natural systems and green infrastructure, as it's known. We have the ability to give, through some engineering, like the Bayou Cane pump station, we give Mother Nature a little boost, and then she can start doing what she does so well. That's the project in a nutshell. Cohen's going to talk a little bit about the grant, and then we'll get back on and talk about some of the ideas about the interior of the project and what we can do from a recreation standpoint. Do you want me to adjust the slides?
Yeah, that's
I kind of got stuck on one.
That's okay. So in March of 2023, the Greater New Orleans Foundation invited Parish President Dove and parish presidents from 13 of the neighboring parishes that are affected by, in the coastal parishes, that are affected by hurricanes and things like this. And they put together the next 100-year challenge. So what it is 13 parishes are going to compete. They took $1 million that they had as a nonprofit and put together 10 grants. 13 parishes are going to compete for 10 grants. So Parish President Dove he had a obligation on the day that conflicted, so he asked if I would attend. So I really wasn't sure if we had to present something or come to him with a great idea on that date. And once through correspondence, I found out we did not. So when I went, a couple of the other parishes had given ideas of projects they already completed that would have really fit this $100,000 grant. And what I started seeing was stormwater retention and things that they've taken and repurposed just to hold water. Because, and on to the east of us, it's a pretty big bowl that they're living in and operated in. And I had seen this rendition. I believe Chris Pulaski had showed it to me, so it was in the back of my mind. So when I had to get up and speak, I started talking about this, but I didn't have the slides with me or anything else. But so I ad-libbed a bit, and it went fabulous. We got a great applause. We got a lot of people coming up to me afterwards saying, we want to help. That's exactly what this is to do. And this is the money we want to put forth to support this. So I came back and got with Mr. Pulaski, Parish President Dove, and some of the others. And I said, man, we really have an opportunity here. So what do we do next? Who should drive this? So the part of the rules has to be a nonprofit, which TITA has a nonprofit as TEDFO, and it's a government entity. So we're going to team up, but we're also going to bring in other team members. So they Greater New Orleans Foundation put on a workshop. They had one scheduled here in Houma, one in Laplace, and one in New Orleans. Well, due to nobody really responding, because Chris and I both had prior obligations on the one in Houma, they canceled it. He and I show up in Laplace, and it was representation from Terrebonne and St. John Parish. So we had 10 or 12 consultants from around the world that specialize in projects like this. From Denmark, from Sweden, from all over the United States, that came in just for that. The Greater New Orleans Foundation paid for. We had so much individual attention, and the people from Greater New Orleans Foundation and the consultancy firm kept coming by and they said, you do realize you're getting a lot for free. You would never get this much time. So we really absorbed it. I mean, they had topographical maps. They gave us a lot of ideas. So at the end of it, we came away with what we were guessing is about $25,000 worth of free consultancy on ideas of how to make this exactly what it is we're trying to do. So we have to go through a process we're registered with Greater New Orleans Foundation for our project. We have to go through and submit a formal application. There's going to be a footage piece, there's going to be a narrative, there's going to be who our partners is. It's a pretty complex process to do. They're going to take it, so that's July 19th, 18th, and in August, September, they're going to do their review, and they should release the winners in the fall. So we really feel good about this. We really feel excited about this. And the great thing about it, the consultants who do this, they do it all over the country. So they know avenues where to go get money from the federal government, from state government, from private foundations that would really be excited to help us turn this unhealthy 1.7 billion gallon capacity, 4,000 acres into something that would really thrive. So there's a multiple piece, and as Chris was talking about, the recreational piece, the ecosystem, the habitat, the tourism, all those things. We didn't know if we should put up several different projects, and their advice to us was make it a super project, do it all as one, and you'll get a lot of more recognition and publication because of it. And I think we feel all the same that the parish has already put $6.7 million in this. So they feel what we've learned through building the Morganza as a parish is when the federal government realizes that you have some skin in the game, they're more apt to help than saying somebody just coming up and say, hey, we need some money for things. So this could really be the kickstart for this whole big project that we're looking for. So when we win the project, and I feel we've got a really good shot at it. So,
I agree. You know, when I went to the workshop, I had attended webinars previously, presentations that Greater New Orleans Foundation was making, but the workshop is really started to all make sense. And you know, 100,000, I mean, it's a lot of money, but when you're talking about a project of this scope and infrastructure, 100,000 isn't, right? And they know that. So what they were looking for, one of the check boxes on their list of what are attractive projects to us is a project that stands a very good chance of being funded by a much larger federal source. So our 100,000, we would like for you to use to enhance and improve your application, right? So as Cohen mentioned, we have $6.7 million in an application for hazard mitigation grant program money. That's FEMA money. We have a hazard mitigation plan. We update that every 3 to 5 years. We just finished an update in March. This project was listed amongst the projects because of its stormwater management capabilities. So that's $6.7 million. The pump station that we just broke ground on last week behind Rouse's is $15 million. So right there, that demonstrates to the grantors and their donors, this is a project that's got a lot of money behind it already, and there's a potential for a lot more to come into this thing. So I want to talk about recreation. We focused on the infrastructure side, but let's talk about recreation. You remember the Rails to Trails initiative back in the 80s. I mean, it's still going on, but not in Terrebonne Parish. That train left the station and took the rails with it. But look at how successful that was in St. Tammany Parish. I mean, they have the Tammany Trace. So I like to think I made it up, but I think Reggie Dupre beat me to it, is like a Cajun Rails to Trails. What do we have a lot of? Levees, okay? So, you know, people have talked about, well, we should start incorporating, you know, bike trails and multi-use trails, not for motorized vehicles. I'm not talking about ATVs and that kind of stuff. I'm just talking about bicycles, pedestrians, runners, that kind of thing. And then this project comes along. Well, it's a stormwater basin, so we got to build a containment berm, not a levee, but a containment berm around the entire area. But why not design it so that it does double as a multi-use path. I mean, in this image, you've got people walking. I don't know if I'd be wearing that when I'd be walking on a nature trail. Might be kind of hot in the summer. Up and down, okay. Whoops. There we go. But this is just just an artist's conception of what could be, just to give you an idea. But if you can imagine, this would be, say, where Whiskey Bayou and Savannah Road intersect. You know, you could have an area that's got some off-street parking, and you could have a small kayak launch. It's a trailhead for people who are walking or riding their bikes. Now, I'm not saying that the trail would be along the entire 10-mile perimeter. It could be, but maybe there's only some areas that are of interest. Or maybe the trail actually departs from the berm and has spurs that go out into the area, like especially if we can get some sort of elevated platform in there where people can do bird watching. I mean, I've been back there. I've seen bald eagles, you know, fishing in the little open water that there is out there. But there's a lot of potential from a recreational side. And so that's a whole nother aspect of this project that makes it attractive to the grantors. In addition, I mean, yeah, we can build the trail, we can build the kayak launches, but you want to look at something that's attractive. So if we were to partner with, say, a group like Ducks Unlimited or Audubon, because they have programs where they do large-scale ecosystem improvement and enhancement projects, and they oftentimes partner up with, say, CPRA or a large parish, you know, on coastal projects. I know they've done it out west towards, you know, towards the Wax Lake Outlet and areas further west, where they've done habitat improvements. So there's all kinds of possibilities for this, and that's what we're bringing in our application and highlighting. So what we'd like to do is assemble a team that's a good cross-section of backgrounds. So, you know, certainly we will need engineers, because there's a major component of this is stormwater management and engineering. But we also need to have people who understand, you know, the regional aspects of how this all works. So we'd like to have a landscape architect involved in the team. We're certainly going to need environmental scientists and habitat specialists to help us with that plan. So our real pitch to Greater New Orleans Foundation is we plan to use your $100,000 to help to pay for the environmental study to determine what is the existing condition out there, what can it be to best serve your project from the stormwater management basin side of it, from the recreational and habitat improvement side of it, and then just from an overall green infrastructure water quality improvement. So what do we do first? You know, we can't just go start planting trees, because you can't plant trees underwater. That they don't grow. Even cypress trees don't do that. So we'll have to do some work out there to get the water levels lessened, and we can control the water levels, you know, once the containment berm gets set, so that'll help. But if we can do a tree planting project, that increases the cost benefit analysis of this entire thing, makes it more attractive to larger federal funding. So this $100,000 could just really turn into a huge benefit for this project. And we know it would be enough to cover those costs. We just are now beginning phase 2 of the living mitigation project. It's a marsh terracing project in North Lake Boudreaux. And phase 1 of that, we had an area about this size that we had to do an environmental study on, environmental review, and it was under 100,000. It was about 75, I believe it was. So that was 4 or 5 years ago. So 100,000, 2023, you know, should be enough to do it.
You know, the good thing about this is most of the grants that are out there require a match of some sorts. Where, so then we got to go hunt for 10%, 15%, whatever it may be. This is no match required whatsoever. So it's free money to be able to start the environmental impact study on this and give us kind of a project list of what we should do first, you know, and as we get to it. It'll be a multi-phase growth project, but it's something that I think conceptually it's going to be fantastic, you know, and personally, you know, when you look, I get people that visit from all over the country, and, you know, I worked internationally for a lot of years, and people come in from out of the country and they come to home and they're like, man, the food's great and the people are nice, but what can we do? This is one of those things, excuse me, that I'd be so proud to be able to take people out there and show them around and say, man, come experience what we see, you know, and it's much more than just an alligator tour.
You know, the image, well, let me go to the one on the screen. Whoops. Come on. That one. Okay, this is Savannah Road, and that's Highway 90. Right there is the Columns Event Hall, and right in front of that event hall is what? The tourist center, right? And it is not out of the realm of possibility to get a servitude, because they're really close to each other, to get a servitude of passage so that somebody could visit the tourism center and from the tourism center have access to this trail system. I mean, that's right. Huge.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody wants to get out and go on a 10-mile hike, and the outer perimeter of the whole project is right at 10 miles. But to have access from multiple points, I mean, I think that's something that's very good for it.
I mean, you could measure off, okay, from the trailhead at the tourist center, it's approximately, say, half a mile. I'm just going to pick a spot, okay, to the blue dot here, which is a water control structure, actually. But what if that's where we put one of the raised platforms? So if somebody's on a road trip and they want to get out and stretch their legs, take the dog out for a walk, or let the kids burn off some energy, they know, okay, a half mile on the sign that says how far it is and what you're going to see. It can also have an estimated walk time. So you know, okay, I need X number of minutes. Same, you know, we could do the same thing in the spots all around it. So there's a lot of opportunities for partnerships. I mean, Explore Homa, they're right there as well. So.
Yeah, and they've shown an interest in just, you know, casual conversation.
So we're looking forward to it. So as Cohen said, the application is due July 18th. Today is June 14th, 2023. So we have this video that we're going to have available online for viewing, and we're going to leave a public comment period open for 30 days. So we'll keep it open until July 14th. So for those of you out there in TV or internet land, know that you can submit comments through July 14th. And when we post the video, we'll also post the email address of where you can send those comments or ideas. And like I said, we'll keep it open for 30 days, and then that way it gives us some time to go through and see what kind of comments we have and incorporate those into the application.
Another piece, Thursday morning, Chris Pulaski and I will be on HTV show called Tita Time. So that was one of the things we try to bring guests on, or groups that we partner with. So it'll also be HTV. They've got a Facebook, they've got YouTube channel, and we post each show on our website at Tita. So hopefully we'll increase the viewing opportunities for people out there, and hopefully everybody will see it and comment. And any questions?
In a perfect world, conceptually, what do you think? How long it would take if everything goes as planned and everything is great? When do you think, like, people could decide if they could come in on this side or this side and actually use it? Like, when do you think that can actually happen?
You know, I think part of the thing is going to be, once we can do an environmental impact and get an idea, okay, instead of putting the cart before the horse. Because my brain set and Chris's may work differently as, well, I think we should do this first. We want to be able to have them put together a nice catalog book to say, you have to do this, you have to do this. With that, we can do a project timeline, and it'll be a phase per one. So we would have a better idea of a project timeline to be able to say, okay, by this date of this year, we hope to have this kicked off and going. And then once that's completed, this phase. And we could do, things like this, the storyboards that tell us, what our phases are going to be and when they're going to be completed.
It kind of gives you an idea of how long, or the
Right.
process.
Well, this thing will not work without the pump station. I was looking on the project board. I don't see a time frame, and I'm sure it was discussed, but how long that pump station, you're probably looking at, close to a year, I would think, by the time.
We're not looking at like 25 years, so.
No,
Be very exciting.
it's not going to be 1 year, like for the pump station, right? And it already has the containment berm portion, because when they dredged out Bayou, they put the spoils out.
Right.
So they're a little ahead of the game on that end of it. But I mean, the funding, that 6.7 million. For a moment, let's pretend that that's enough to do the entire 10-mile containment berm. I mean, we won't even know if that project application is approved until at least November of this year. And because it's federal dollars, every step has to follow federal procurement laws, public bid laws, Davis-Bacon. I mean, there's all these measures. Yes, it's great because the money's coming from the federal government. If we don't use it, somebody else will. So we're going to get it. We're not going to leave money out on the table. But the downside to that is the pace at which they move. And I mean, we're not talking months. We're definitely talking years. I don't think we're necessarily talking decades, plural. But it's still, you could be looking at a 10-year total build out, let's say, for all of it. But
Families can look forward to it, to say we'll have this, in the near future.
But,
is a good thing.
President Dove was successful in getting this engineered and permitted compared to some of the other projects. Considering they had to do mitigation, all of that was done in a record time.
And we already have, not to cut you off, Chris, but we already have the permit from the Corps of Engineers before the groundbreaking. That's almost unheard of.
Yeah.
So we're leaps and bounds. And excuse me, one of the examples I was going to give is the reason that Terrebonne Parish was so successful in getting Morganza to the Gulf off the ground, because we didn't go out and ask for federal money. Because they'll study something for 25 years or whatever it is. We taxed ourselves, and then we started the process. And that's the kind of example I used earlier when the federal government says, well, you guys do have skin in the game. This is that great example of that already. So they're contributing, they're not funding. So,
An assistance.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure one of your questions will be, where's the boat launch?
We won't have a boat launch.
They're going to want to launch those boats in there.
We'll have a kayak launch.
Okay, that'll be good.
Yeah.
No motorized.
No motorized.
This is all about health and fitness and no motorized anything except for the pumps. And those will be electric.
That'll be good.
So they'll be quiet.
Paddleboarding?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kayaking, paddleboard. I'm sure there'll be a pirogue or two out there. But most people don't go out in a pirogue unless they have a shotgun. So we have to make sure.
No shotguns allowed.
But the parish, we did just complete a couple of public boat launches, one in Chauvin and one in Montague. Wildlife and Fisheries put one in Pointe-aux-Chenes. And those all have dedicated kayak slips as well.
Yep.
So, it's catching on, and, kayaks it's kind of like pickleball. Get out of the way because it's coming. But it's one of those things you gotta just be planning for. But I mean, a 10-mile paddle is nothing for some of the kayakers. They're kind of like the guys who do road bikes. You know, they won't think twice about waking up on a Saturday and go for a 50, 60-mile ride for 2 or 3 hours.
I've paddleboarded through the Everglades. It's a long little trip.
Yeah.
So, you know, just like it was prior to me coming to joining TITA, but there was a levee run that they put together. It was a fundraiser, and through that we learned that there are running groups that want to change scenery, you know, and you know, so I think you can draw a lot of outside, which puts heads in beds, which stimulates the local economy, which does a lot, and you know, build it and they'll come, we hope.
Yeah, when you have your mile markers, that's your runner's dream. Like if you have your mile markers, or you know, moms that drop the kids off to school want to go and get a full 5 miles in her. I think that's a great idea to have the mile markers on there, because that's what, like myself and anyone that is going to use that for that running or exercise, that's a great idea because they do look for that.
Probably a map that says you are here and shows the mile markers on it as well, like in the big malls and
And a cut through.
Well, and
for the cheaters.
you know, there's whenever you, in terms of from a planning standpoint, you know, when we're looking at trail network systems, I mean, what scores big time points with, you know, your recreational trails program grants or your larger Department of Interior grants is when you can show connectivity between all these trail systems. So right now, there's an initiative called the Louisiana Trail. I mean, you ever heard of the AT, Appalachian Trail? Runs from Georgia to Maine. Okay, there's a group out there, and right now it seems to be basically led by lots of Rotary groups throughout the state. But they're essentially looking to create a trail from Shreveport and Ruston and Monroe and sort of come together, down through the central, get down, and then kind of go branch off and head towards New Orleans and to Lake Charles. But they're looking at coming through the Morgan City area, you know, the old highway 182 route, and get over to LA 20, and then from there spur off and go to Thibodaux, and another spur coming into the Houma area. So that puts you right by 311, and this project, we have Bayou Country Sports Park, well, right over here. We'll have a multi-use path that'll run from that along Val High all the way to the Civic Center. And then from there, you know, we could link up, and it doesn't always have to be the same type of trail. Like, as long as you can show that they're connected. Okay, well, this is a bike trail, this is a pedestrian trail, this is a multi-purpose, this is kayak, but it all links together. Checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. So it makes our grant applications all the more strong.
All right. Any more questions? All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you all for coming out, all of you.
All of us.
Cookies. See, if you didn't see what you're missing, we got cookies. So you didn't make it out to the meeting.
Thank you guys.
No problem. Thank you guys for coming.